Good evening. Tonight, the world is responding to a disaster in an island nation as we are still learning just how bad the situation is in the Philippines, though it's now clear it's worse than we first knew.
We're looking at the aftermath of one of the strongest storms ever to tear across the ocean and smash into land. That super typhoon, 195-mile-per-hour winds cutting through the Philippines. Families there waking up to the reality of what they survived.
And take a look at these before and after images. We know much of Tacloban has been completely destroyed, but it wasn't just coastal communities. This inland town was wiped from the map. And on an island to the west, this town of 36,000 people suffered widespread devastation.
You know, one of our core principles is when friends are in trouble, America helps. As I told President Aquino earlier this week, the United States will continue to offer whatever assistance we can. Our military personnel and USAID team do this better than anybody in the world, and they've been already on the ground working tirelessly to deliver food, water, medicine, shelter, and to help with Airlift.
But I remember walking into the command post and just getting like an overall big picture and trying to wrap our minds around where we were going and what we were taking. So we needed to take Marine guys and stuff, and we were planning to go into Tacloban airfield. The tough thing is we knew that we would only have 1 hour to land, conduct an engine running download of 165,000 pounds of cargo, upload as many passengers as we were able to, and then depart, all within an hour. So in the heavy world, as I mentioned, the operators are the executing authority, and the higher tasking authority is either typically Tanker Airlift Control Center, they're out of the 618th AOC out of Scott Air Force Base, or the Air Mobility Division out of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, just depending on the mission and how it's allocated. Essentially, they run point on command and control, and for this mission, we were being managed by AMD, so our home base from where we were from, so we were familiar with the people and kind of the operations. However, we quickly learned that this was going to be quite more complicated with all the players involved and how fast things were moving. Just to give you like a background at this point, these are all the players I can remember at the time. So you had the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade, so 3rd MEB. Like I said, the CONOPS was still in construction. You had PACOM, JSTOF-P, 36th Contingency Response Group, Office of Foreign Disaster Aid, the USS George Washington, Carrier Strike Group 5, multinational LNOs. And at the height of it, after about a week to 10 days, you had a total of 66 aircraft, 12 Navy vessels, 13,000 military members, and over 1,300 sorties in a little over 2 weeks. 4 days prior, I had to be probably the youngest ones in the C-17. But our training at that time is, pretty good to get you up to that position. But just to give you a perspective for some non-flyers in the room is the first time I landed the aircraft with a co-pilot was just 4 days earlier. We put these people in these positions not necessarily because of their experience level, but instead because of the trust, judgment, and decision-making that comes along with it. So I think that's a testament to the training environment we do here in the Air Force. That's essentially what, for the C-17 world, what we're looking at for aircraft commanders is good decision-making and good judgment. So in that training environment, the aim is not to expose you to every scenario before you see it for real. That'd be impossible. Instead, what we aim to do is develop your decision-making and your judgment kit, essentially. So when the non-standard or not typically seen happens, you're prepared to handle it using both your occupational and interpersonal skills you gain through training and through life. We had a pretty young crew. In addition to myself, we had 2 co-pilots, 2 loadmasters, and 2 mechanics. We would pick up 2 Raven personnel in Kadena, and Ravens are their security forces personnel who not only guard the aircraft, but they do a cockpit denial mission as well too. Our first co-pilot, it was his 2nd mission ever in the C-17, so he just got into the unit. I just got out of the FTU at Altus down there. Our other pilot had just completed a recent requalification in the aircraft. Our first loadmaster had just had her 20th birthday. Our second loadmaster was a seasoned tech sergeant, and both of our mechanics were 7-level guys that were flying crew chiefs. So your kind of task as an aircraft commander, or just leading in general, is to first create that sense of team. And you create that with unity and conviction towards a common purpose. So you exploit your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses, and always find a safe and executable way to get to yes. We knew our day would essentially entail basically cargo into Tacloban and evacuees out. But we did not know what else we would be tasked for, where we would end up that night, what other fields we were going to. We heard rumors that there were thousands of survivors huddled around the airport waiting for evacuation, but had zero basically essay on how this was going to flow after we landed. However, with all the unknowns, I knew our team's success would be determined largely in part from our teamwork, how we could leverage our networks or people within our networks, and then preparation with basically outside the box thinking and adaptability. We call it in flying, we call it chair flying, and that doesn't just mean how you fly the airplane. For us, the harder thing was the logistics on the ground. How are we going to get this done and get it done quickly? In the C-17 world, floor loading personnel is definitely not routine and typically only reserved for contingency operations. So prior to Tacloban, the C-17 had only floor loaded between 200, 250 people from Haiti, and we had extremely limited guidance in our flight manuals basically on how to plan and conduct such operations. You would think it's as simple as load them up and select max power. However, there's a lot of considerations for weight and balance, center of gravity, emergency egress, passenger oxygen system, ramp blowdown weights, the safety of passengers, life raft, all these come into play. So essentially we only had a few sentences scattered among several publications with loose guidance on how to execute. Essentially they were loose recommendations since this wasn't a direct mission set which we planned against all the time. So what we did on that first leg out of Hickam inbound to Okinawa on day one is we spent most of our time figuring out maximum number to take, because we knew that's what they were going to ask, right? When you have thousands of people there, that's going to be question number one. You'd hate to be the guy there figuring that out on the ground. So we're trying to figure out the max number to take. We were combining this with the current waivers we were operating under. We had a good amount of waivers in order to permit us to do all these items. And this is where I truly saw the power of outside the box thinking and team dynamics. So everyone was engaged in participating, and the beauty of it was that everyone had a different perspective. So pilots were more concerned with takeoff and landing the jet, right? Takeoff and landing performance. Loadmasters were more concerned with weight and balance. The Ravens, the one guys from Kadena, they're more concerned with security and anti-hijacking. All these functions, go into our mission set. But through these discussions, one of our crew members pointed out probably the pivotal thing which allowed us to execute. So we're brainstorming together, and it mentions in one of our manuals that you can use the rings on the floor with 10K tie-down straps, which is something we all carry, SNC 130s as well, C5s, you carry in your cargo hold. Mentions that you can estimate about 12 to 16 per row. I remember it clear as day that one of us actually, asked the question, how many rows of rings do we have in the C-17? Nobody knew. Not something you would counter as a GK-able on a check ride. So what do? We just got up and counted them. We counted them, we worked the math backwards, borrowed a few 10,000-pound straps from the port in Kadena. We planned military personnel at the exits, and we developed our logistics plan. So basically on the way over, we were already formulating in our head how we were going to do this as a team. So I remember calling our chief of stand about and our commander and saying something along the lines of, not saying, hey, what do you think, and giving them no information. I said, sir, here's the current waivers we're operating under. Here's what regulations we're referencing. Here's what we've came up with mathematically as a team and factoring in safety. And here's how we're thinking of tackling this. What's your take? As expected, both of them were, extremely supportive and gave me an extra confident boost that, that we had considered all the main variables at play. So I had a very good relationship at the time with the senior director at AMD. We just had done a multitude of phone calls in the past 3 or 4 days. And he was very motivated. He was an empowering guy, and he was very forward thinking. I knew we all wanted the same thing. We all wanted to help as much as we could. So basically I just pitched him an idea. I asked him for his permission for the next several days to execute on our own timeline, to our own fields, taking our own cargo. That would allow us basically to maximize our impact by syncing our delivery and evacuations with the guys holding take-on at the field. You can just deal in the tactical level, and you don't got to be overwhelmed by all the inputs from other organizations. I think big thing this reaffirmed for me was the concept of decentralized control in fast-moving, complex operations. Both AMD and ourselves were still doing our primary job. We were executing at the tactical level, and they were moving bigger rocks at the operational and strategic level. So in the end, our crew, we conducted over 40 sorties in less than 2 weeks. We did 5 days straight of close to 24-hour ops, not having to refuel in between, so all engine running offloads. These were short flights in between. And we delivered millions of pounds of cargo, and we evacuated more than 2,500 people. And on that second trip in, once you gain efficiencies and you get quicker, we were able to take 674 people, so 683 people on board.